All right, so here with Utah State offensive coordinator Kevin McGiven. Just kind of want to ask about how you ended up here. Did Bronco just call you up and say, "Hey, you want a job?" How was that process like for you?
Oh yeah, Bronco and I have some history together when he was a defensive coordinator and I was a graduate assistant at BYU, and we've stayed in touch. Just that, I'd never had the opportunity to work with Coach Mendenhall, obviously, but when I heard he got this job, and I was obviously extremely interested in the opportunity to work for him. Just based on the things that I had heard from guys that I know, and that, being around the type of program that he runs, the type of person that he is, I knew my values were aligned, and so yes, I sought him out. He sought me out at the same time. I think probably a couple people gave some good recommendations, and so I was fortunate enough to get that call, and we hit it off right off the bat, and knew that that it was something that I was looking for, and that he was looking for also.
So obviously you wanted to work with Bronco Mendenhall. Was there anything about Utah State that added to wanting to work here? Anything about the Aggies that you felt was something you want to be a part of?
Yeah. This is my third time here, and so to me there's something about this place where even after the first time, you kind of start to bleed blue a little bit. The second time a little bit more, and just coming back here, it just felt like I was coming home. Bronco has the pillars of our program, a family first, last, and always, and so for me, a big part of it was my family being here, and so that was part of it coming back home. But I feel like this is a special place that we can do some special things. So.
I managed to forget that you were here before. You were here in I think it was early 2010s, something like that. You were the quarterback coach.
Yeah, I was here in 2009, and then again as the OC in 13 and 14.
So what was that experience like for you back then? I mean, that's like people looked at that as like that's when Utah State football kind of got reborn, and you're kind of part of that, growing the program and helping get it to where it is today, where the standard is the bowl game, where it used to be like if you won 5 games, it was kind of a good thing.
No, it was, we first year of a rebuild under Gary Anderson, the first time I was here in 09, and so got to be around a lot of really good players that were on that team. DeAndre Burrell was the quarterback. Robert Turbin was here. Kerwin Williams came in. Bobby Wagner was here, a bunch of really good players. It was fun to be around those guys and see that kind of get started. And then I left, and by the time I came back, it was pretty well established at that point, where when Matt Wells took over, I was fortunate enough to come back and be the offensive coordinator. But, the culture had taken hold a little bit, and, they had been able to recruit really good talent. And so I was able to be kind of the recipient of some of the success we were able to have.
So now coming back where the program is where it is, but obviously a bit of a down year last year. What are the biggest steps you guys got to take forward to getting back to what this program, had been for most of the 2010s and early 2020s?
Yeah, I think it's 11 bowl games in 13 years and a conference championship not too long ago, and having been in the conference at another school, and always looking at Utah State and what they were doing that year, what they were capable of, and so I've always known that it's a special place that can do special things. Obviously slipped a little bit last year, not par for the course in terms of what this program has been about, and so we need to reestablish a winning culture here, and we get Broncos program in place, and I think once we have that culture in place, then that will sustain us for a long time.
So. Bronco, he's obviously got a more unique culture, a lot of things he tries to do off the field, with his team. How long do you anticipate that maybe taking, where pretty much all these guys, maybe a few of the New Mexico transfers, they haven't been in this culture, they don't know what it's like? How long do you kind of anticipate that maybe taking, if it'll be a year or more?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm kind of along for the ride as well, with my first opportunity with Coach Mendenhall, and so I'm learning things on a daily basis. We're learning about these kids on a daily basis. I know he's commented on the fact that, the attrition has been less with this team than other teams that he is taken over as the head coach for, and so I think we've got some really hardworking, resilient kids. The culture seems to be taking hold pretty quickly, and but we've got a long ways to go.
You mentioned the turnover. How much of the turnover are you expecting on that offensive side? I mean, a lot of the attrition for the offense came from graduations. Most of the guys graduating, Jalen Rose goes to the NFL. So is there any level of attrition on offense that you maybe weren't expecting, or is it kind of what you expected, the amount of players that ended up leaving?
I think it's these days about what you would expect when a staff leaves. We come in, we didn't recruit guys. They may have been recruited to a system. They may have been recruited by a specific coach. There's obviously NIL involved. With some guys leaving or being enticed to leave, and so you kind of have that expectation when you come in now that there's going to be a pretty high rate of turnover. And so we evaluate the roster and we look at guys. We have conversations with the guys that are here that we would like to stay and be a part of the program, and then we understand that we got to go out and rebuild that roster. So.
Does there end up being a silver lining with the more attrition that teams tend to get when you come in as a new coach, where you can go out and recruit guys that you want, or is it still kind of hard because you're bringing in a bunch of new guys together, don't have any consistency?
Yeah, that's always going to be hard when anytime you have a bunch of turnover on a roster. But I think if you have a strong foundation, you have a strong enough culture with the guys that are here that it tends to weed people out. I think Coach Mendenhall's program, we weed people out in the vetting process when we recruit them, and so we got to make sure that we're bringing in the right fit when we recruit guys and when we evaluate them, so that when they come here that they are a good fit and less likely to leave because they're coming here for the right reasons.
I talked to you and Coach about things that need to happen off the field, but what do you want to see from this offense on the field throughout spring ball, knowing it's not going to be a finished product by the end, but what progression you want to see from these guys on the field in spring ball? What do they need to be able to accomplish as a unit?
Yeah, the biggest thing right now is just learning how to play football together and learning how to do it with extremely high effort and intensity. That's today they were running around, they were playing fast. I don't look real hard at the execution of the scheme at this point. You'd always like it to be really, really good, and there were some really good moments today. Some things that took hold over with the install in the off season. That was fun to see. In an actual practice setting against a defense. But biggest thing is just getting total effort out of these guys and them playing 100% every single snap. That is reflective of a Bronco Mendenhall football team and a Bronco Mendenhall culture, is just getting them to play that way consistently. That's going to be the hardest thing to deal with. If we can get them to that point, and then as we go, the schemes will come.
Does the scheme typically come like either later in spring ball or even fall ball? Is that kind of the typical process where you focus on the effort and then get the scheme together a bit later?
Yeah, I think offensively when you're playing with the football and when you have 11 guys and everybody's assignment is huge. The ball doesn't always find the mistake. But there's a lot of those. A lot of those things that can happen offensively that have to come together, and sometimes that takes quite a bit of time, especially when you're working with a lot of bodies that haven't played together.
So I got asked by the quarterback position. It's kind of the end-all, be-all. I don't know if you want to reveal anything about the quarterback battle, but what do you expect from that unit where you have one guy returning, a bunch of other guys, one guy returning that played, and some other newcomers? What do you expect out of that position group?
Yeah, at this point, the expectation is just to go out and compete and be the best version of themselves, and we'll figure out what that looks like as it goes. But just like I said, them getting out there, executing, working within the offense, competing, being the best version of themselves every day, and being great leaders for us.
So what do you want to? Obviously, you're not going to have public practices, not going to be able to have the spring scrimmages. But what do you want to be able to tell the fans? What would you want to be able to show the fans? That you're not really going to have the chance to until the fall.
I think it's more. Being able to come and experience the culture. Seeing these kids' work ethic. How just watching them run around at practice, them being around each other, seeing the brotherhood. The very tight knit group of kids that are working hard, and and so the biggest thing for the fans is that expecting a product that they can be proud of, and these kids are working hard to try to make our fan base proud.
I'll ask this one last question. So the spring window coming up, I know it's not the most popular thing with coaches because you get guys coming and going really late in the process, but you anticipate having to add more guys in the spring portal just to fill in holes that you may not have been able to fill in during the winter window?
Yeah, I think there's a few spots left coming out of the last recruiting cycle where we still got to address some needs, and then I think beyond that is we're just going to have to see what happens with with this team, and if there's any attrition as we go throughout the spring or at the end of spring. I think most of the guys I'm seeing are doing a really good job. They're bought in, but that could possibly change that as role changes as spring ball goes on. But I like these kids. I like this team the way they're working, and so we'll address those needs as they come.
All right, Utah State offensive coordinator Kevin McGiven. Thank you very much.